Alright guys, as times went on with my channel, I've made videos about reviewing fixed blade knives. Did one here recently, and in that video I talked about folding knives and the fact that I've been getting more and more into carrying those in the woods as well. I've always carried a folding knife. It's just something I didn't pay that much attention to. For the most part, I mean, I carry a folding knife every day, have since I was probably 7 years old. But I never really thought about them in terms of wood carry. I've always been more drawn to fixed blade knives. Folding knives were just something that I took for granted just for doing daily tasks. I liked them, I just didn't focus on them for woods carry. And honestly, that's kind of strange, because growing up, there weren't a whole lot of men around me that carried fixed blade knives. Younger guys and myself carried them, but most of the men, all the deer that I saw get cleaned, all the bears that I got seen cleaned, the working men, they all carried pocket knives or a folding knife that was on a sheath on their belt, which was very common when I was young. I was really quick when I was young to jump on the new kind of tactical knife trend, one hand opening, lightweight materials, what I could afford at the time, you know, on budget, and move away from traditional knives. And this year I have been slowly moving back towards traditional knives for wilderness carry and even EDC. But we're going to get to that. So starting 2024, I had been carrying since last year. Last year I had moved away from even carrying a pocket knife. I had started carrying a small fixed blade knife for my daily carry. Everything I did, I carried one of those, and then in the woods I would just upgrade that to one of my favorite belt knives. So the knife that I was carrying around a lot was this little fixed blade here. This is the Bradford Guardian 3. I really like this knife, actually. I don't know if you can tell by the sheath here, but it's definitely had some love. I carried it every day for well over a year. But some rule changes, or more rule enforcement with the company I work for, and then also the state that I go into, they have some rules about fixed blades that are kind of iffy for me to carry that. And so I decided that better safe than sorry, I'm going to move away from that. I definitely don't want to get myself in trouble with either one. So I was looking at what did I want to carry, and I kind of was waffling between another just normal folder and a multi-tool. And the multi-tool game has changed so much since I was younger. So the first multi-tool I ever carried was this. I've had a few, but as far as an everyday carry multi-tool, it was this one. I got this in Camp Shelby, Mississippi during pre-mob training for Afghanistan. A couple weeks before I left. I didn't know they were going to issue us some Gerbers, but I actually prefer this more. And as you can see, it's older, it's got a little bit of rust on it. And I carried this from the day I bought it every day until I got out of the military. I carried it every day I was in Afghanistan, and I loved it. But I always had to carry another pocket knife. Why? Well, for one, this is kind of stiff. This is the Leatherman fuse. And two, as you can see, you have to open it to access anything. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. I like the idea of just being able to pop a pocket knife open. Now this works, and what I used it more for at the time, what I really liked it for was like pushing pins on like a 240 or a saw. And it's really good for that. Obviously it's got a nice sharp blade and all the little tool scissors and things like that that I needed. But even the blade here, this is one of the problems I used to have with traditional knives. You have to kind of dig your thumb in to get to this blade. And it locks, but it's just not, you know, if you're trying to get a knife out in a hurry, that's kind of slow and cumbersome. But I did carry it as well. You know, most soldiers I knew at the time all carried some sort of multi-tool. But that's what kept me away from the multi-tool thing. To me, they were big. They're, you know, a high-ticket, high-dollar item for my budget. And so I just stuck with a traditional pocket knife. But when I really started looking at the newer multi-tools, the new tools, it was because with my job, having a pair of pliers on hand is handy. Some of the things, just for general yard work. I have a friend actually, he never leaves the house without a Leatherman. He always has a Leatherman. And so he was always talking about how handy it was and all that. So it got me looking at them again. And I picked up this. This is the Leatherman Wave Plus. And I'm gonna tell you, I've been carrying it every day for several months. And I love this thing. Now, I hadn't originally thought I was gonna carry this into the woods. And I'll get to some of the stuff I was carrying more and what I'm also carrying as a partnership with this. But I love this thing. It's not much bigger than my fuse was. Everything's rounded, nothing's sharp compared to some of the multi-tools I have, you know, bought and the thoughts of carrying over the years, just cheaper ones. One-handed opening for the blades, they lock. They've got their traditional lock like a lot of pocket knives. It's got the sharp blade and it's got the serrated blade, which I have found that as much as I hate serrated blades, I love this because it allows me to cut cords, cut tape on boxes, all the things that dull and just gunk up your blade, and then keep my normal blade very, very sharp for you know, any kind of like working on little fine things on your finger if you get a splinter, cutting up meat, you know, things like that. I've used it to help clean some of my buddy's doves. I've cut up steaks with it for lunch. The pliers work great. It's got you know, the flippable bit, Phillips bit, bottle openers, scissors, a little flathead that's kind of a small pry bar in some ways if you don't do it too hard. It's also got the this little micro screwdriver that's flippable as well from Phillips to flat, and I absolutely love that. That has saved the day for my wife a few times with her glasses. It's got a saw. We're going to get to that. I love little saws. I carried a Victorinox for quite some time into the woods, a little tiny one. It's just my little folder, and for years, until I finally decided to retire it because I love that knife so much I didn't want to lose it. That thing is sawed through deer breasts and everything else, like the breastbone of a deer. Loved that knife. So I love these little micro saws that'll do way more than people think they will, especially just for little woodcraft tasks, which is another thing, that little sharp blade. Now, this is not my favorite steel. I really wish there was a better steel blade for this multi-tool. If you know of one, if you know of a replacement blade I can get for this that's better than the steel that comes on this one, please let me know, because I'm a really fan of this one, but I really wish it had a better blade steel, but it works. And then it also finally has a file, which has a diamond file on one side, and I really like that for like sharpening up hooks and different little things like that. It's just so handy, and I've been carrying it in the sheath, and I've thought about pocket carrying it. I've thought about getting a clip, but right now I'm still working with this, and if I might change, I don't know. But moving on, so back to the saw thing. We come to this. Now this is kind of a strange one for me, because I bought this knife, I don't know, 8-10 years ago at a jockey lot, and I paid $5 for it. Didn't know what it was. I just knew it was some kind of Victorinox. Thought it might even be a knockoff. I didn't know. And for a long time, I would throw it in little like backup bags, or just a backup knife, or just throw it in my knife drawer. I never paid it any attention. Earlier this year, when I went out in the woods for different things, and it's funny, I thought these little pliers right here were just absolutely useless when I, you know, over the years, just when I would see this knife, I would laugh about it. These things are great if you're fishing and wanting to put on split shot. These things work just fine for that. That is a task that this thing really works for. But this is a Victorinox Winger, Delmont, Switzerland. I can't remember the exact, I don't know if you can see that. I can't remember the exact model this is. It's got the lock, slide down like this to close it. But I got to thinking, hey, I might want another one of these. And what, do they have any variations of it? So I got online and started looking. And the only place I could find it was on eBay. And it's got a little awl here. The only place I could find it was on eBay, and it was $200 for one of these. They don't make these anymore. So I immediately stopped carrying it because I don't want to lose it since it's vintage. And so I was looking into other possibilities, and that's when I picked up this. Now this is an old-timer buzz saw. Comes in a leather sheath, nice little leather sheath. And I picked it up because it's got this nice little blade here. And it's got this saw. And I really was attracted to this, just for little like whittling tasks. So that's where I'm going with the traditional knife thing. If you follow people like George Washington Sears, Nesmith, and Kephart, people like that, they carried a fixed blade knife, but that was for cleaning fish, cleaning animals, cutting up vegetables. They rarely used that for hard whittling. They used a fixed blade or a folding knife. And I kind of want to follow that same concept to save my fixed blade and keep it very sharp. But adding a saw to your fixed blade for like whittling and little tasks like that, fine carving tasks, it's just something that I was very interested in. Now this one locks, and it also has, let's see if I can get that unlocked, there we go. It also has some little tweezers and a toothpick, which could be very handy. It's a very sharp toothpick, actually. Really good for digging out splinters and things like that. It can be very handy. But so I started carrying this around some, and this knife, I like it, except for two things. One, the blade doesn't lock, which is okay. I prefer a locking blade, but it's okay. The only time it really bothers me is when I push on it. It'll bend a little bit when I'm pushing in to cut something. When I take my thumb off, or like if I pull back, it just doesn't. I'd prefer it to lock. And secondly, I don't like this blade steel. It's some sort of stainless steel on this one. They make a carbon steel version. I would like to try that one. It's got a gut hook, so it's a little wider, and I think it's a little shorter. I haven't compared the two, but I probably will. And I believe it is high carbon steel, so I'm very interested in trying that. The problem with this one is it dulls kind of quickly. If I sit around and whittle with it for like 30 minutes, it's pretty dull. And it sharpens easily, but if I, it'll dull before I finish some tasks. And so I don't like that. So I haven't carried it as much over maybe the last 2 months as I initially started carrying it, but I still like it. It's real light to throw in a pocket. I don't carry it on its belt sheath, with this belt sheath, sorry, much. Even though it's a nice sheath, I just don't. It's just so light to throw in the pocket. I've just been doing that. And this kind of leads me into that traditional knife vibe. They used to make, well, they still do make, a lot of traditional knives that were purpose built for tasks. Whether you were a farmer or you were like a hunter and you like to skin a lot of game, even some had small fillet blades on them. They would usually have more than one blade, and they were purpose built more so than the knives we carry more now. They're light and they work, and they usually have some pretty good steels. So it's kind of caught me on this traditional knife kick. So this was the old-timer buzzsaw. And the knife that I ended up picking up, honestly, just to try out, not thinking that I would really enjoy this knife as much as I have, is this knife. This is the Buck 110 Light. Now I've added this little lanyard, and it does come with a sheath, nylon sheath, which again I don't really use. The Buck 110, the normal Buck 110, most everyone's heard of. It's got the brass and the wood, and that knife was very loved in its time, and it's still loved. You just don't see it carried quite as much anymore as you did back really before my time. Even in the 80s and the 90s, I saw these carried a lot, and I still do see them from time to time. And I didn't expect I would love this knife as much as I have, especially I thought it was just going to be a cheap version of the Buck 110, But I actually have really been enjoying this knife, and I'll pair it with my Leatherman sometimes. If I'm just doing my daily, everyday tasks, I'll usually just carry this, going to work, things like that. But lately, if I'm doing anything outdoorsy, I throw this in my pocket. It's so light, I don't even notice it's there. And it's a more of a traditional design. I have to open it with 2 hands, but it stays really, really, really sharp for what I paid for it. I don't know what steel this is, but it sharpens up easy and it stays real sharp for what I've used it for so far. And I have done everything from using it, you know, for like a little bit of whittling to while I'm catfishing, cutting up brim for catfish bait and things like that, and small around the house kitchen, if I just have it in my pocket, around the house like kitchen tasks for like cutting up a piece of bread or cutting up a piece of meat if I don't want to get up to get a knife and I forgot to pick one up, things like that. And it has worked phenomenal. I really enjoyed this knife so far. And this is not this blade. This is like a clip point blade for like a hunter style blade. Not really great for skinning. It'll poke a hole and things like that if you don't watch what you're doing. But I know I've seen a lot of game cleaned with this knife. Not this one particular, but this design, buck 110 and the buck 112. I've seen a lot of things cleaned with that, and there's no telling how many game species have been cleaned over the years with a buck 110 of some variant. It's just been very popular, and I did not expect to like this as much as I have. This is just a phenomenal knife to throw in a pocket, and paired with the Leatherman, this thing, the 2 of them together. So, you know, the only knock to the Leatherman's blade, other than just the blade steel, is it's kind of small, which is fine. But if you need a little bit bigger, you've got this. And these 2 together, I mean, the weight and the room it takes up is not much. If you're heading out in the outdoors and you throw a belt knife on your hip, you've got a lot covered here. You've got 2 good sharp blades, and you've got your saw and all your other things. And this knife is just a great backup to a fixed blade. Now, I wouldn't want to baton this through wood, but I would definitely use it for a lot of tasks. Now, the spine's not sharp, so I couldn't strike a ferro rod with it, but I'm pretty sure, and I haven't tried it, and somebody can comment if you have, but I'm pretty sure I could probably strike a ferro rod with this saw on the Leatherman. If not, I bet there's another sharp edge somewhere in one of these tools that I could strike a ferro rod with. But if I'm in that dire of a strait, I've got real problems anyway. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to try out several more traditional style knives this year. I'll probably be carrying this everywhere I go, even in the woods, regardless, in the sheath or in a pouch on my chest rig that I carry sometimes in the woods, or in a pocket or something. This will be there, because it's really handy, even when I'm camping, grabbing hot pots instead of just rely on my leather gloves, because if they're real hot, a real hot stainless steel pot will burn you through leather gloves, if you didn't know. And you know, putting on fish sinkers, I have pliers I take with me a lot of times fishing, and sometimes it's just quicker to get to this to get a hook out of a fish's mouth, depending on my setup at the time. So this coupled with this is dynamite for me. I do know that they make some other models of Victorinoxes, similar in size to this, the Ranger grips. I definitely want to try some of those out, and I intend to get one in 2025, and you guys will see my review of that once I've used it enough to give you a review. And like I said, these aren't going anywhere. Love these knives. They're traditional knives. You're probably going to see me using traditional knives more this year for certain tasks in videos, just to try them out, and we'll talk about those knives over the time period that I have them. And again, I do want to say I have no knock on this Bradford that I carried for a while. I had some very specific reasons why I needed to stop carrying this, and I can still carry this when I'm off work and in my town, but I like to try out new gear, and I would still carry this if I felt the need for any reason. I mean, this is a good little knife. I like it a lot. My only ever fault was I'm bad about using a knife tip as a screwdriver when I shouldn't, and I don't know if you can see that, but I did chip the edge of the blade right there one time trying to back out a screw, which is another reason a multi-tool is probably a great EDC carry for me, even in the woods, is that I will use a knife for whatever I need to use it for, and if it's the only tool I got with me, it gets pressed into services it wasn't meant for. But if you stuck with me this long, thanks for watching. Please stick around for more videos. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you later.